stimulated in ways they didn't need to be stimulated before.
Sherry Turkle has been teaching at MIT for more than 30 years.
Every professor who looks out onto a sea of students these days knows there's email, Facebook, Googling me, Googling them, Googling the next door neighbor that's happening in the classroom.
Like most universities, MIT allows laptops in its classes at the professor's discretion.
I mean, it even changes how teachers teach, because now the pressure is on teaching kind of scintillating PowerPoint things that will distract them from the web.
So you've hit on most of the key points. There are two sorts of things you can test students about. You can test how well they're paying attention in lecture, and you can test how well they're absorbing information from readings that you assign. And I don't think they're doing either of those things well. I have no idea how that's possible. I just gave my class a midterm, and I was really asking obvious questions that had they been attending carefully in lecture, and had they been doing the readings carefully, everyone should have gotten 100% on this exam, and the mean score was probably about 75%. It's not that the students are dumb. It's not that they're not trying. I think they're trying in a way that's not as effective as it could be because they're distracted by everything else.
I teach at MIT, I teach the most brilliant students in the world. But they have done themselves a disservice by drinking the Kool-Aid and believing that a multitasking learning environment will serve their best purposes. There really are important things you cannot think about unless it's still and you're only thinking about one thing at a time. There are just some things that are not amenable to being thought about in conjunction with 15 other things.
Outline of 25 in the last 15 minutes. I feel like the professors here do have to accept that we can multitask very well and that we do at all times. And so if they try and, restrict us from doing it, it's almost unfair because we are completely capable of moving in between lecture and other things and just keeping track of the many things that are going on in our lives.
No one's actually measured whether these kids are as successful at multitasking as they claim to be. But out in California, a respected research lab is studying their counterparts on the Stanford campus in Palo Alto.
They understand the research, they're smart kids, but they seem utterly convinced it doesn't apply to them. We want to study what's really going on in the brain. MRI studies we're going to be seeing. But when it comes to what parts of the brain, we know nothing. These are really the first studies of brain imaging of multitaskers versus non-multitaskers. So anything we discover here is new, because we know zero. Now, in this lab here, we're researching speaking on the cell phone while driving.
Tell me about a time when you had to deal with a difficult person.
You walk around the world and you see people multitasking. They're playing games and they're reading email and they're on Facebook, etc. Yet, classic psychology says that's impossible. No one can do that. In general, our brains can't do two things at once. And we want to ask the question, how do they do it? Do they have some secret ingredient, some special ability that psychologists had no idea about, or what's going on? You guys were chosen because you're very high chronic multitaskers, and what that
NAS allowed us to film one of his studies, conducted on a group of carefully chosen students.
On a college campus, most kids are doing two things at once, maybe three things at once. These are kids who are doing 5, 6, or more things at once all the time.
The experiment looks simple. Identify numbers as odd or even, letters as vowels or consonants. But it's rife with traps in the form of distractions. NAS is testing how quickly these kids can switch between tasks without losing their focus.
I'm pretty much constantly texting, and whenever I study, I have my laptop out and listening.
Brian is a junior.
I'm watching a YouTube video, I'm checking my email, non-stop refreshing the page, and on Facebook chat.
He's pretty confident that his multitasking is successful.
So that I can always stay connected.
So you think you're effective?
I think so.
Okay.
But his results, like others NAS has tested, suggested otherwise.
What we found was that you're actually significantly slower when you're switching than when you're doing kind of the same task consistently.
Virtually all multitaskers think they are brilliant at multitasking. And one of the big discoveries is, you know what, you're really lousy at it. It turns out multitaskers are terrible at every aspect of multitasking. They get distracted constantly. Their memory is very disorganized. Recent work we've done suggests they're worse at analytic reasoning. We worry that it may be creating people who are unable to think well and clearly.
When I got back to New York, I noticed how much I too fell prey to distractions. I kept catching myself in the act, checking my email when I should have been writing a script, Googling something to satisfy a random curiosity. This is affecting all of us.
The Shakespeare quote is, "We are consumed by that which we are nourished by." Speaking for myself, if all I do is my email and my calendar and my searches and I feel great. I feel like a master of the universe, getting my calendar and my meetings and I just feel great. And then it's the end of the day, I've been busy all day, and I haven't thought about anything hard. I mean, the point of it is to be our most creative selves, not to distract ourselves to death.
Distraction. Combating distraction isn't as easy as turning off your email program. If you turn off your email program, it's not the software that's going to complain, it's the people on the other side. Your friends, your boss, your bills. You know, where's my report? Why haven't you answered your email? Are you mad at me? You can't do this in isolation. If you're going to deal with the problem of distraction, it's something we're going to have to deal with together.
I feel like something's out of whack.
Maybe it's time to press the pause button.
Well, it's not just you, it's everybody.
We need to know if we're tinkering with something more essential than we realize.
It's changing.
Alright, you finished reading the first chapter, now we're starting the second chapter. The good things about this program is these are excellent documentaries produced by excellent expert reporters in the field. You've just finished watching the first chapter, which is entitled Disruptions by Everything in the Internet Era. And then in the second chapter, the theme is what it's doing to your brains, okay? Now, I do not want to be too ambitious in pushing you to watch them all, but I do want you to go home, spend the weekend, finish watching this documentary, okay? You can read it here without expanding it. You can see chapter by chapter. At the end of that, there are a lot of good things. Look around the website, including educational material, discussion forum of people around the world responding to things like this. Now let me try to point out a couple of things in the Internet era, which is very much concerned with information technology and a knowledge society. That is the theme of this week's CISG113, Information Security and Privacy. They started out by telling you this is a generation of kids or adolescents or young adults who are growing up feeling comfortable with using technology. And so technology has been with these kids and also all of you almost through your secondary school and now into your college era. But when you bring technology into the classroom, many of the teachers do not feel comfortable enough because they consider that it's a distraction away from your listening to this lecture. And a lot of the teachers will bar you from bringing in your iPad, your notebook, whatever it is. And if they ever see you using a mobile phone, please get out of my room. But in MIT, they use an example of Sari Turco, a very famous author, and she's a little bit willing to let the student use these devices on the home under a very important context that they're going to be using it to enhance the study. But indeed, we cannot guarantee. And then the discussions topic switched to another very interesting issue on the multitasking. A lot of you and a lot of us, including me, are doing several things at the same time. And this is not new because when our brain works, we are actually associating things moments by moment. Although I'm talking to you now, my brain brings me to different paths that I'm going to engage. So multitasking seems to be an enticement for people today, young generations, that we can always handle things, several things at the same time. And the interesting study presented by first chapter's Stanford professors, many of the students there, they are doing several things together, although they firmly believe they are good multitaskers. But indeed, the research, the experiments show that they are not. Okay, what does it mean? I want to put you to study that, think a little bit more about this. Now that you have your learning partner, okay, do you remember? You need to submit information on your learning partner by the end of Monday. And I said if you cannot do it by Monday, you need to do it before the end of today. Alright? So where do you do it? Now let me remind you one more time. You need to turn in the information of your learning partner under Dr. Van's Q&A hotline week number 2. Okay? So here you can see a lot of your fellow students have already done this, but not all of you have done this. Alright? So each one of you, regardless of what your learning partner has done, you must do it. And the way to do it is very simple. You just copy and paste the table that I provide you in the message this way and fill in the information and put forward there and you type something, alright? So if you have not done this, make sure you provide me with your learning partner information in the Dr. Vet Q&A hotline for week number 2, that is this week, before the end of today. Now I'm going to set up a peer discussion forum for the 2 of you, okay, as soon as this Saturday, so that you will have 2 full weeks time to engage the conversations with your learning partner to get ready for the artifact you're supposed to submit it by the end of the first learning contract. Now remember, whatever you're going to discuss with your learning partner is fine, okay, but you have to organize them in such a way you can discover they are going to be useful. Alright? So now let me take attendance first before we come back to something else. So attendance for today. Kalia, thank you. Claudia, not here. Ada, thank you. Andy, thank you. Ryan, thank you. All right, over there. Jenny, thank you. Jackie, thank you. White Pink, thank you. Pansy Home, thank you. All right, Manfong, not here, okay. Beatrix, not here, okay. Seaman, not here, okay. Fish, thank you. You need some water. Angela, thank you. Rita, thank you. Wing Yum, are you here? Thank you. And then Ruby, thank you. Joan C, YC, thank you very much. Eliza, thank you. Or Elise, Lokka, thank you. Stephen, thank you. Terrence, thank you. Winnie, thank you. White Jean, YC, thank you. Dixon, thank you. Winnie again, thank you. Gideon, thank you. Brent, thank you. Michelle, thank you. Then Eddie, thank you. Lighting, thank you. Garky, thank you. Ryan again, thank you. So let's see, Ken Chan Kwan, thank you. Kelvin, thank you. Baka, thank you. I can hear Hao. Not yet? Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone whose name is not called? Okay. Now, let me go back to a little bit. On the context of what is information security. I hope you have already watched this.
When I say security breach, what's the first thing that pops into your mind? Someone hacking into your bank account or dumpster diving for confidential material? In fact, the majority of security breaches happen in the workplace unintentionally. Many employees are still uninformed about the type of information that needs to be protected. The documents that put people and businesses at risk are things like invoices, reports, and employee records. Anything that shows customer, employee, or company information. And this is the stuff that can lead to identity theft, which is a huge problem today. 9 million Americans and close to 2 million Canadians are victims of identity theft every year. Mishandled, lost, and stolen papers are often the cause. Identity theft costs victims in the US about $5 billion every year. Altogether, nearly 20 million hours and over $150 million are spent trying to resolve the problems created by fraud. But you know, there's a really simple solution. Document destruction. Shred all documents when you don't need them anymore. A shred all policy means that every office document is destroyed. No one person has to decide what is or isn't confidential. Here are some simple tips to avoid potential security breaches in your workplace. First, identify risks that may threaten the security of confidential information. Know the life cycle of documents in your office, from generation to storage to destruction. Then, create a security culture so that all your employees and suppliers value confidentiality. And finally, train your staff on a shred-all policy. Don't leave it to chance, because no one can be right 100% of the time. Shred it, making sure it's secure.
Here we go. Let me try to give you an example of this. What is information security? Because example can help you understand better. Year after year, when you come to take a course, normally you will have tests and then you have exam. So, do you keep the test paper or do you keep the exam paper? Normally, no. Particularly the exam paper. Well, teachers will keep the exam paper normally for 1 to 2 semesters, and then we need to share them. Okay? Otherwise, your exam paper will be left to someone else's hand, and your big name's there, and people will just make fun of it. Now, that is not very good in terms of privacy. So, if we need to protect your privacy, we need to have something like this. The generations of exam paper, the storage of exam paper, and the destructions of exam paper under a security policy, which is meant to protect your privacy. Okay? What is information security? Do you got some idea? From this simple video. Alright? So, put some thought into things like this and other precious resources that is available here, and start the conversations with your learning partner and try to put things together for you. Remember, in this course, as I've emphasized many times, you are the person who's going to tell me what you've learned from it based on the number of items you've chosen to watch and discuss with your learning partner, and later on with your teammate, and later on with your task force member. Okay? And then finally, definitely, I could take a good look at it in your learning portfolio. But in the process of doing it, your job to do it bit by bit, week after week is very important. Or better say, lessons after lessons. And do not forget, in each week, in the particular block here, I have some kind of branded learning activity suggest for you in each week. Now this is week number 1, and then another second week number 2. Read them first. Make sure you get informed. There are a lot of things you need to go through systematically. Now you have one housekeeping block here, week number 1 and week number 2. Starting next week, you have 2 more weeks, week number 3 and week number 4, and that will wrap up our first learning contract. So, what does it mean? You have 1 week left now. We're in the middle of the second week, and you're about to start the third week. So you need to get started with your learning journal. You need to get started with your conversations with your learning partner. You need to think about what artifacts I should or you should submit in the first submission period for learning project 1. And do not procrastinate, all right? So now it's 11:15. I'm going to say, you're free to go. If you have questions, you can stay and ask me, all right? Thank you very much for coming. I see you next week, week number 3. Okay. That's it for today's CISG 113, Section 1, Information Security and Privacy. This day, September the 4th, 2014. Until next week, stay